Recording started.
Excuse me, this is Rob. Are you guys going to turn on the ability for me to turn my camera on? Hello? Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Thank you, Michael. And everyone is present. Rob is present remotely. It's Dan running today. And let's see, we need a motion to approve the agenda. I would immediately move to amend. I want to add review of timeline to the very first item. I just think we should take a look at August. And then in everyone's packet, you should see a little colorful calendar because there have been some changes to the timeline very recently.
Can you guys hear me? Hello? Hello?
And,
hello?
in the informal, we don't need it, or I will use it.
I think it's the second we took it up.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll look at that in a moment. We need a motion to approve the June 19th minutes. Excuse me, everyone. Take a call from our. But we're in session now, and according to Morgan, you're part of our meeting.
I'm not. I can only hear, but my mic is muted, permanently muted, and I'm. Yes.
Okay.
Also, the video is not turned on.
He's unmuted.
Nobody can see me.
So Morgan, did you unmute it?
Oh yeah, he's been unmuted. So
can you hear me?
You turned on?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you on my phone, but I'm not hearing you on anything else.
Yeah, she doesn't have my mic is on my computer, but it's not coming through the Zoom.
It's recording.
Maybe I should log off. Come back. I'll try. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt the meeting.
That's okay. We're right now just kind of housekeeping. Okay, thank you. And we have a second on that. Actually, yeah, we'll just review limited small meeting for that. It's less.
I'll just wait a second. Just get out there.
Okay. John, for announcements, I have a brief announcement, which is I have distributed packets to everyone. And the information.
Talking to the microphone.
Sorry?
Talking to, yeah.
How's this?
Much better.
So my announcement is that I have distributed packets. I have a lot of information here. Please consider it a privilege to our committee and your chair. Thank you. And does anyone else have an announcement?
I just want to remind everybody that we are being recorded. This does go out publicly, so let's keep the comments civil and
update.
Comment that anything you say will and will be used against you. So
we have to review absolutely. All righty. Well, the first item on the agenda is a quick review of the timeline, and the reason I thought it would be helpful is that we're almost into August. I hope this thing is working. And there were a couple of changes. And the reason we especially care about August timeline is during the time, during August, that there is a substance on the ballot and the candidates to determine. So that we did not have a review of the presentation of the operational budget or the capital budget on July 12 and 13. Capital budget will be reviewed on Thursday, starting at 6 p.m. early meeting of the board. And then the operations budget will occur at the slightly out of order meeting on August 3rd. That's according to our calendar. On August 24th, The AGM agenda measures, ballot, and explanations will be reviewed. I don't know if the board plans to meet that deadline. We're running a little bit late, but we'll find out. And on August 25th, nominations and elections in the general manager begin to draft the election booklet. Again, I would anticipate those deadlines may slide, especially given that on the 26th, we have our 50th anniversary gala. And my sense is that we should have a lot of staff time to make that happen. So does anyone have any comments or questions about the timeline?
In times past, it seemed to present in the final changes, and previously, and since the last couple of years, so I'm just asking if that is an expectation. And I don't even know how those came about previously, but they always, the time that I was making it was usually like that. Forward to the board.
Well, I would defer to Michael's history with N&E because no one has proposed the bylaws change that has come to my attention. I'm not aware of.
I don't know. Think this up, but
Well, that was my question. I don't really know how those. If they are we all just looking at the board, I mean, at this point, it's too late for this election. But
well, I don't think it's too late. I was, the way it was explained to me was the board can put measures on the ballot and or change, like they have other elections, they have had things where they want to change the wording or something, that update something like that. And but for the board has want to present those and make those. I didn't know if N&E could suggest something, but because I thought for homeowners we had to do a petition to get, you know, but something like that.
Homeowners do, the one that I recall was with Linda presenting. But again, there might have been some history behind it, like some discussion before that we should happen.
It could be brought up at a board meeting, ask, can we do that?
Yeah. I don't have any. I'm just wondering, the only reason I'm asking is because I don't want to get to like a weird and you know, so that's just.
I have something that could go into that, but it's going to be discussed a little bit later anyway, so.
Hello, everyone. Would you please?
Ask at a board meeting, is, you know, is that since we're all new people, and what is the process? Does it need to do that, or what? What is the process? That's my question.
Can you guys hear me? Hello? Hello? Can you guys hear me? You guys, can you hear me?
Okay, in a sense, it's new business, but I will be interested to know what time frame we'll be looking at manning, personing, womaning a table at the gala, and who might be available, you know, to do like a 1 or 2 hour shift. We can discuss it, because I put it under new business. Part of the timeline.
What are the times when a table would be the whole day? Or is it
I think that'd be too much.
Yeah.
I understand there's going to be a budget presentation, either 10 to 12, or maybe 12 to 2. I think the dates are possibly not fixed yet. But I thought after that, or possibly even during that, might be a good time.
You guys, can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me, you guys?
It might not be because there's a.
Michael, can you hear Rob on your computer?
Hello?
Can I hear? No, I'm not logged on to it.
Oh, okay.
I don't have the code, I couldn't see.
Because
So I'm speaking, you guys, I'm speaking, but I don't think you can hear me in the room.
I could log in here real quick.
Echoing.
They have, I didn't check. Other.
You know, as I always said, the deal is kind of like a 12-hour event.
11 to 6.
And then I've seen something about.
Oh, why didn't?
But that might be.
Okay, for vendors, it's 11 to 6.
Hello, test 1, 2. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me now, guys?
I can hear you now, Rob.
I don't hear.
Yeah, what I was trying to say was that, could you please speak into the microphones? It's these microphones are very directional. You almost have to treat them like you're eating an ice cream cone. And it's very hard to hear without that.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Thank you. Sorry, you guys, to interrupt. I think we got a bit of a learning curve if someone's joining via Zoom. Yeah. I can talk to you after the meeting about it. Thank you.
Well, I can hear you if you want to say something.
Oh, no, it's just there was discussion going on, and for some of you, it was very faint because of it's just something you have to do is speak into the mics. It happens during board meetings as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Rob, we have been discussing provisioning the table at the August 26th gala and what hour we might want to set up. I'm not sure I've seen, I'm sure I haven't seen a final timeline for that day, but I'm thinking that if we were there possibly for 4 hours, that might be enough. I absolutely can't commit to keeping something going for the entire time. Since it looked to me last time I saw a calendar events or whatever, it's possibly a 12-hour stint. But we're going to discuss it again at the end of this meeting, just quickly. So that's as far as we had gotten. Oh, and also, I don't know, maybe you were blocked from hearing us. I did drop off your packet and hopefully you were able to pick it up.
Rob, did you get a packet at your house?
Yes, I did. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. And I just wanted to say that the information in the packet is privileged to our committee. So, all right. Well, I think we are, actually, I kind of jumped over homeowner comments, but there's no one present, so that wasn't choose that mission. So I'm not really at the central reason that we needed to be early and I wanted to meet tonight. There will be a board meeting on Thursday to go over the capital budget. The board is going to meet at 6. It may be a very long meeting. I haven't even asked the board, would we be an agenda item on that meeting, because I wanted to hear from everyone first before we went, before I, approached them. But essentially,
Where are we on here now? We're done.
We are status of 2023 N&E manual.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and really all of the issues kind of come together. That one plus coordination with admin and plus coordination with the board are kind of interrelated. And we'll probably, I'd like to just kind of give a little presentation on my experience, and then definitely want to hear from all of you. I think you're all very concerned about our community. It's very smart. Hopefully we'll come up with something that works well. So just a little bit of background. We have a board-approved N&E manual. It's called the Revised 2022 Manual. It contains a couple of changes that we talked about in terms of how SBCA or N&E would announce late withdrawals, and the way that manual now is written, we can announce them up to the print date. And there's another change in there, I should have called it out, but it's in your packet. So there are a couple of changes. There were actually a couple more because that, how can I put this? There was some miscommunication, I believe, about the N&E manual and the vote to approve it. So that on April 27th, there was some discussion, and in your packet, you'll find some revised language that came from the executive team. And that language is incorporated now in the revised 2022 manual. But because it had been our understanding that the vote was still pending, we had a couple more very simple changes, like N&E will conduct the candidate forums, was one I remember. At the next board meeting on May 11th, it turned out that in a consent agenda approving the minutes of April 27th, the vote to approve the consent agenda included a vote to approve the manual, whereas we had been under the impression there was still a pending vote, therefore it's a pending discussion. But we do have a board approved revised 2022 N&E manual. No. What we have the board approved is the revised 2022
yes,
manual.
correct. Yes.
Now there was, for me, a desire to kind of, that 2022 manual was a bit of a quilt, like a crazy quilt. Things have been stitched and added and imported and whatever. And so the first thing that struck me is the pagination just didn't make sense. And it was difficult to pull it apart because different people on Google Docs have been responsible for different elements of the thing that you know, was part of that. Initially, the general manager thought she could find staff who would straighten that out. But as I volunteered to do it, I would say it was a real time-consuming task. Meanwhile, because some time elapsed between April 27th and May 11th, and I think we probably had a meeting in there, we made a couple more changes, mostly very simple ones. And only to find out that on the 11th, the manual was complete. It was over. So in the meantime, I had at least straightened out the pagination and the kind of the mechanical document formatting issues, of which there were a lot, and added a few small changes. And I thought that we could bring it back. That was our thought when we met the end of May, that we could bring it back at the next meeting. But we were meeting again, I think, early to be ahead of a board meeting. But the board agenda was full, and the now revised, I thought it should be the revised 2023, and the manual with our signatures on it, you know, our working, etc., did not go before the board. And somewhere in there, we also had the difficult experience of my failing to be clear when I would want to assume that role of N&E chair. And so Michael showed up for a board meeting. It was probably where we thought we were going to talk about this thing. And it turned out that from the point of view of the board, he was no longer a board member. So we lost that opportunity at that meeting to introduce the N&E manual. So my dilemma at this point in time is that I have a certain amount of time I want to give to N&E. I don't have full time to give to N&E. And I was happy to give all of May and resigned to giving all of June, have been kind of horrified that apart from a visit from our grandson, who came solo from Boston, unaccompanied minor, he didn't fly his own plane, it's been taking all of July to try and resolve some of these issues. So I have a kind of a decision tree, which is we are going to be entering an election next month, and we need an authoritative guideline that everyone in the Valley will agree is our deciding authority. And so our options would be a little piece of history I forgot to. Sometimes just purely I've lost track, and I was trying to give you guys a calendar, a different calendar from that one, of attempts to get it. I had sent to the board the revised 2023 N&E manual, and I thought it was beautiful. You know, all the little kinks have been taken out and uploaded, and there was nothing troubling to me about, we were not trying to create a brand new pathway towards some other outcome. But as it turned out, sorry?
About what time?
It was good. Just see. That's just the thing. I wanted it to be on the June 22nd meeting, which then I believe got canceled. Yeah. Very much at the last minute. I had actually sent it to the board, I sent it to the executive team, I sent it to AJ, I sent it to the GM. But that meeting at the very last minute was canceled for lack of anything on the agenda, which startled me because I had put it out there. But, you know, life happens, things come up, and, you know, that is part of being human on this planet. Around that time, I did hear from Nancy Aldinak, former N&E chair, and she had some concerns about the revised manual, that it was not actually correct, that there were issues basically around members not in good standing. And to understand that discussion, you have to go back to March 9 and listen to the, or maybe you were present, listen to the discussion on the board about members not in good standing and whether or not providing that information to members of the N&E Committee was a violation of the Consumer Protection Act. And it was the sense of the board that, strongly expressed by the GM and by the treasurer, that this indeed sharing this information beyond a very limited group was a violation. It represented revealing credit information that should be always privileged or private. So it was the sense of that meeting that the going forward, the N&E members at least would not be privileged to that information. It was not clear to me whether the N&E chair would be privy to it or not. But this was part of the thrust of Nancy's concern. As I, I reread, she was helpful and careful and detailed in her responses. She seemed to feel not so much that the manual did not provide correct guidance when we had a third-party provider, but the manual as written also took on or tried to address a situation where we did not have a third-party provider. And that part was inaccurate in terms of this issue. And she helpfully outlined to me about 6 or 7 or 8 places in the manual where, in her view, it needed to be reworked. Well, this pretty much came about around the time I'm dealing with the grandson and his Mars survival training, etc. And I looked at it a few times, and I did feel that it was probably more than I could take on. And then more recently, it seemed to me that if the manual is, we have a third-party vendor in this election, and So in a sense, her concerns could be addressed going forward if we wanted to ensure that the manual covered every contingency. You know, if something would happen, California would have a gigantic earthquake, the left would fall into the San Andreas Fault, you know, and et cetera. But then most likely those things are hopefully not going to happen, and that we're cool. But what I did do during the traffic policies, I thought I tried to address this. I sent you all the latest revised N&E manual. And I thought that perhaps by putting a caveat in this manual, the so-called, I call it the beautiful manual, because imagination works. I think that's really nice. If you go to page 4, you don't have it, but I think you a copy of page 4. I put in a caveat, and I was hoping perhaps this would be a workaround. So in the preface on page 4, that's okay. And you're looking for something called preface, and it's just page 4 of the single sheet. Yes, I'm going to do that. It might be further back. It might be on to the last sheet. Yeah. So basically, let me just quickly read the preface and then show how the caveat flows into it. And so the purpose of this manual is to establish the procedures and provide a resource for all future nominations and elections committee, board of directors, and admin staff. You know, a big goal, because things do change. The N&E admin staff and board will participate in a cooperative manner to ensure the integrity and efficiency of the association's annual general meeting and special general meetings, and etc. These practices and procedures are intended to comply with the bylaws pertaining to the N&E and its functions, duties, and activities where there is a conflict the bylaws control, and they will always control. But the caveat that I thought would perhaps address some of Nancy's concerns is that for the 2023 AGM election only, you see it's a little box like itself in bold. If there is a conflict between practices and procedures in the N&E manual, which is not a bylaw, and then see sections 1, 5, and 6. Actually, Nancy provided much more detail within those sections, but I want to keep the little caveat focused. And the executed VLAC contract dated March 20th, 2023, the executed VLAC contract shall control. Because in that contract, the whole issue of whether or not we ever, as a committee, are informed of the identities of members not understanding is moot. We just don't get that information. And that is the way it was last year, as I understand from Michael. So I was hoping.
No, it wasn't Nancy. Well, actually, last year we didn't do any checking on in good standing. We just stamped the envelopes and marked who, you know, made sure that they were. Actually, all we did was date stamp them and put it in the thing. And at the election, UNILEC had the master list of who was in good standing, and it kicked out the ones that weren't, people that weren't in good standing. So UNILEC has the access to that in their system. So they were the only ones who knew. Pardon me?
By admin, which has it.
By admin. The 2 years prior to that, Nancy and I, 1 year sat there and went through everyone, looked at it, yes, they're in good standing, or no, they're not in good standing. She had a master list. And the 2 years prior to that, Linda and I sat through and did it. So I do not understand the brouhaha on this whole thing. We're not looking at their credit rating. We're not looking at anything other than a yes or a no that they're in good standing. So,
but I want to say, Michael, that it is a non-issue for the upcoming election, so long as
UNILEC has it in their system to do it, we don't have to worry about it.
I checked that it's not an issue.
Well, for the upcoming election. Okay, go ahead.
If, for instance, we get to the end of the election and the number of not in good standing is far less or more than we've seen in recent trends, I think that would be something that N&E would want to look into to make sure it was done accurately. We don't know that we need to see the identity per se, but we would need a way to check that that process was done correctly. So I don't know, like I'm reading the bylaws of what N&E is responsible for, and the bylaws take precedence always. And it says the committee shall supervise the ballot during elections, which to me would include whether they are valid ballots or not. And it says that the committee shall supervise elections conducted during any annual or special general meeting as set forth in Article 3. So I don't know how, this is a very important part of an election, I don't know how you take away completely from the committee the ability to do that, which is verify that the ballots counted were in fact in good standing, or that the ballots not counted were in fact not in good standing. You see what I'm saying? Like, in order to certify, you have to be able to validate at least that process.
Is the information you elect has correct and expressed in the ballot? That's one big question.
Such as an audit. And on what day do they have to be standing on the day of the
On Saturday of the election, because in the past, or every year we have a person sitting there. Gil was there last year, waiting for people that if they needed to get in good standing, he could take a check. Yeah, he had the list.
So you would have to.
In the past, when Linda and I did them, Linda would take them upstairs and give them to the staff, and the staff would call the people and say, "We have your ballot here. You're not in good standing. If you want to be able to vote for." If you're only good for the budget, you can't vote for any of the board members or whatever, the rest of the ballot. So you're only going to vote for budget. And they were allowed that opportunity before the last second on voting day to come down and do it. I thought it helped, was very helpful to make sure every vote counted. The way they're doing it this year, they asked us to put an article in the View that said, make sure you're in good standing. But it seems like it's changing the whole process that was set up. It's just kind of like, that's how we did it in the past, and suddenly it's wrong.
Well, I'd like to say a couple of things just really quickly. And that is that I did chat with Joel about this issue. Because my first thought was, well, if Joel is sending this information to a credit bureau, it seems very unlikely he's at work. Of course we don't. Yeah, He said, he also pointed out to me that our compliance rate of people paying dues has never been so high. It's like 97.7%.
Yeah.
So the number of people who are potentially not understanding is a small fraction of the community, and that's a wonderful thing. He did say that if an account goes to collection, once it's turned over to a collection agency, what they do with it may include informing the credit bureau, and most likely does, but the Valley does not. So that's just information for us. And then picking up on what Michael said, the workaround in the discussion on March 9th, because I've listened to that meeting at least 12 times. We started up just before the first hour is over, and it runs to like 1.27. Is that 2 or 3 things? One, which I've prepared, an announcement for the views, remember that you will count the last little handout in your packet. So to remind people that they should be, if they're concerned at all and want to vote the whole ballot, they should check. Number 2, that we can have an announcement in the election booklet, so it alerts people. These are suggestions from Joanne so that everyone is informed equally.
We only have so much room in the election booklet, and if we add to that, it's going to cost us more money.
Well, Joanne did suggest a third option, and she's not here tonight to speak to it. I think that our committee should end up with a recommendation for the board, which is even a special mailing to the entire membership on this issue.
It would be cheaper to just put it in the ballot, and probably more would be right there.
Yeah, and we don't have any bylaws and limits or anything.
Yeah.
No. Space.
And
I just wanted to share that that was raised during this March 9th discussion as a way of addressing this. But to get to your point, Karen, this is why I thought that it seemed to me that the issue of members not in good standing is information under the is why the bylaws almost required. And so we don't want to give that away. On the other hand, I think it would require, it's going to require a legal opinion, almost certainly.
All we need is for division, but in the state of Memphis.
That's all it said on all the printouts that Linda and Nancy had that had division and lot, and it said yes or no. It didn't mention that they owed, money to Comcast or AT&T or anything like that.
Right.
It was just a simple yes or no at that moment in time. And I wanted to add to all this. I've done this 3 years in a row, okay? Or that's my 4th year, so it's 3 years in a row. I've only seen one ballot come out that was not in good standing, and that's the one that I got censored on because I mentioned, I laughed and said, "Oh, it's such and such a ballot," and it made me laugh. But and suddenly 6 months later, I get this censor shit up saying I have to sign a disclosure statement because I mentioned something. But
well, Michael, to be honest, that's because that was a much bigger issue than just saying that someone was in good standing and not right. It's because of who that person was in their position and they're required to be at all times.
the board member, so.
That part of
I have the name, but it's a fact. So.
But that is a big issue, and that's another thing that I'm sorry, I'm getting on a tangent, but I'm just curious what that process is. It's not a discussion for tonight, but to ensure, I mean, I know that candidates are vetted. What does anybody here know? What is the process for ensuring that board members, maybe committees members are also required to be in good standing at all times? Who's checking that for the
Yeah.
I think N&E should know that. Just know that it's happening and who's doing it, who's responsible.
That would be a whole issue because I've never heard that there's any kind of checking once you are elected to a position or even appointed to a position.
May I ask a
certainly they
question?
know, staff knows who's being contacted.
Yeah. Rob's trying to give me.
Okay.
I just
Sorry,
have a
Rob.
question. This concern about violation of the Consumer Protection Act or consumer protection laws, is that some new provision that was added, or is our leaders indicating that this has been there all the time? And the reason why I'm asking the question, the reason why I'm asking the question is that just about every organization that I've been a member of, where being able to vote by being a member in good standing, leaders always had the ability to just yes or look at a list, yes or no, are they in good standing or not? Like Michael said, no one's looking at their credit report. So I'm wondering if this concern is some new change to the law, or is this something that someone's dug up and is their interpretation that there's a problem here?
I have the same concern. I'm trying to find where the Washington Consumer Protection Act even comes into play with this.
Same, I read the entire thing.
It doesn't. It has nothing to do with it. Or it's unfair business practices, and that has nothing to do with an organization checking to make sure that somebody is balanced.
Because my feeling is, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, you guys. I wish I could be there. My feeling is unless whoever's pointing out this concern can show the objective evidence that it is a legal problem, then I think we should just follow the process that we've done the last 3 years, probably for ever since the association came into existence. Just my 2 cents, guys.
No, it's all valuable, and I've been struggling. I felt like this was not an issue that I wanted to just sign off on for the reasons that we're all talking about. When I looked up consumer protection law myself, federally, I mean, there are dozens. it wasn't even clear where I would begin to conquer this info. So that's why I thought, okay, if this is an issue, and I will say, it seems that in the discussion on March 9th, the board was unanimous in feeling like, oh my God, you know, this is a big concern. So I imagine that it will require Rich Davis or other attorney input.
Had any of them read the act?
And I also thought, what did you say here?
I asked if any of them have read the act before being concerned about it. I mean, forcing an opinion on. I mean, yes, when you go and all these words on consumer protection, oh, of course, yes, you can't share confidential data. But again, what does the law actually say? What is the specific concern? And then one additional concern I have, not concern, question is, what is it in the law that would allow SBCA to share outside of the organization, but not within? And that's a really hard legal leap I'm getting at. Again, if I were to see a legal opinion or someone to point me to a specific, clearly stated portion, I would be happy to make the changes. Without that, I would leave the N&E manual as it is and say, if this is a concern, please show us the data so that we can make the changes to conform with the Consumer Protection Act and not our interpretation of or fears about the Consumer Protection Act. Those are two separate things. Also, I just want to say, so I think there's two issues here. And one is the previous, what I would call a customer service thing that we did, which was give people the chance to get in good standing. And I think that is a good and valid thing to do. I don't think it's a necessity necessarily, even though I that we're not doing it. I think it's great. It helps elections. It helps more people vote. Overall, I think it's just a good thing to do. But it's not a requirement, in my opinion. What is, though, is the ability of N&E to be able to certify the election. To certify the election, we need to be able to have access to the data that we need to certify the election, which in my opinion would be sort of like an auditor would do an audit, and you just sort of follow things as they come up. Seeing the anomalies, you have to follow that through and figure out what's causing them, and can you reconcile that before you can certify an election? You can't certify it and you just said, well, just trust us, even if the numbers look off.
Which brings up what we talked about earlier about bylaw changes in the ballot. This has become such a convoluted thing. It either needs to be answered correctly as with consumer protection, this small little yes or no and any other information, so we can certify it, or why not just get rid of it completely, take it out of the bylaws so that you could just vote. I mean,
It was voted on last year, but it didn't pass. I mean, it's 2 years ago. It's been.
Well, it must have been a couple years.
Yeah, but I think
because it's always been an issue that comes up, and but again, we've been 40 minutes on this, and
This is such a thing.
but I know, but still, we're not going to solve this year. It's going to take an attorney opinion. It's going to take some back and forth. It's not going to get solved this year, so it's going to end up being tabled into the manual next year, along with Nancy's concern on what if we don't have an outside vendor, how are we going to do this stuff? We have an outside vendor this year, so her question is moved. We have an outside vendor this year that's going to do the election. And so her question is a good, valid question. What do we do in case we don't use an outside vendor? How are we going to do this? But that also could be tabled until into next year's N&E manual stuff. And some of the other stuff that we have, I honestly think we have a good manual right at the moment that answers 99% of our questions. We could come up with a whole bunch of hypotheticals that could possibly come up, but they may not. I mean, there's always something that we didn't think of. Somebody pops up with some question. But I think we have a really good manual right now. I I know what you did was well done. I looked at it and it's got rid of all the grammatical and the layout things. But we have a manual that works, and I think we're stuck with the one that they approved.
Well, they have not approved the one that I have done.
No, but they approved the one that we put up earlier as a.
That is the question for me for the committee. Do we want to go with the one they approved? Or is it not? Do we want to go, do we want to resubmit the one that I've done? And if yes, is it the sense that the caveat has to go out? I mean, I think the election will be held according to the executed contract. I can't imagine that any of us have the bandwidth to try to come up with some alternative to that. And I thought perhaps that we since under the executed contract is all sort of done automatically, there's really very little opportunity to become aware of who might be delinquent. The workaround again, I've not restated it, but if you want to, the workaround that was discussed, and I would say that people were sensitive to Michael's point, that will, you know, we have to let them know, we can't let them know the day of. And so that's where this notion that there will be a news article, there might be an independent mailing that would cost more money, there could maybe be a box and a voter pamphlet for all.
I just want to chime in a little bit. In regards to people being delinquent with their accounts, they're adults. They need to take some responsibility. We are not collections. We are not in charge of collections yet, nominations. Our accounting department, our accounts receivable, should be sending out regular notices of delinquency if somebody is delinquent. Between the accounting department and the property owner, that's where the dues need to be paid. If our accounting department is not pursuing delinquent accounts and at least letting the homeowner know they're delinquent, then we have a problem with our accounting department.
But may I only point out, they were not necessarily let the homeowner know that they are potentially limiting their ability to participate in an election.
That is what we all thought, that when we became homeowners, we received the bylaws. It's our responsibility as an adult to know when our votes count and when our don't. If we put just one line, one sentence in the ballots that say homeowners must be in good standing as of the date of the AGM or vote for anything other than the budget, and we find the verbiage to be counted. That is enough to, again, our homeowners need to learn to adult if they're not already adulting, and knowing when your financial responsibilities become due is something they have to do. And if they choose to ignore that, and they choose to ignore that statement, then they have, it's not a choice that we're making to choose, we're not choosing to not acknowledge the vote, everything over and above the budget. It is our responsibility to discount their vote for anything over and above the budget. It's not our responsibility to make sure Joe Lakeman pays their bills.
Hey, Morgan. Do we still have our collections?
Yes, Angie Huggins.
Angie Stoner. Okay, so we have accounts receivable and we have a collections person.
Yeah, she works part-time.
Okay, so I agree with you. We should have the accounting staff to handle that side of it. Yeah.
Our collection actually is extremely good.
Yeah, and I think if they are, I mean, I don't see any reason why between accounts receivable and collections, they couldn't just be like, you know, letting people know when they are communicating with them, just so you know, if you're wrong with saying you won't be. That doesn't seem like it would be that hard for them to pursue that, which I think, you know, like you said,
so your suggestion is that perhaps accounting, as they send these out, a reminder on the AGM
in their normal course of business to make sure they are making that information available. So a little line in the ballot visits and the letter just me ahead and check out was great.
Which would handle all that and answer all the questions, and I think that's a good point. The last point, you know, if we and I agree, people need to know what the rules are and how to operate within the system. And so, I mean, we can't do it for them and all that. And if we put a line in the ballot, if the county puts a line in with their thing, you know, you're behind, by the way, if you want to vote, you only get a vote for the budget, not the other part, really, that's all you can vote for if you're not current on your dues. But it brings to the last point is Karen's point of how do we as the entity be able to certify the election? Someone needs to be, we have to just take the word of UNELEC, but that's what it says in there. And UNELEC has to take the word of wherever that information comes from, which I guess is, that's where we would get the information too. So we would have to take the word of from that paperwork too. So it's kind of like if UNELEC's information is current and correct, it's fine. And we can certify the election. My whole thrust is I want every vote to count. And so that's been my reason for being on N&E from day one. So I want to make sure that people understand their voice counts, they're homeowners, they're part of the community. Their votes needed to shape this community, and that I want to see that they know ahead of time instead of at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning before we count the votes that they need to come down and get current. So and that's the only reason I want to, you know, anything we can do to make sure people know. And I like Lori's points; they were perfect.
Maybe when our accounts receivable person just sends out, you know, billing statements, notices, monthly notices, whatever, just in every single notice throughout the year, every single notice, there's just a line on the bottom that says, all, you know, your account must be in good standing, i.e. all things paid in order for your vote to be counted for each year. Every single one. In order
for you not to be just a budget only vote.
Whatever it is to say, if that's just standard, like that goes into their footer of their billing, then there's no excuse.
Well, and maybe just step it up a notch in October. Make sure you're really, you know, you're running those reports frequently. Maybe the frequency of notifications is a little bit more. I mean, and it's not something that we can tell staff to do, but I think these are things that would cover, like you said, we as an entity want every vote to count, like all of us do.
Yeah.
And so that's something that it is not really an entity function to handle, but it can be easily addressed through the normal course of business.
The only really other option is to change the bylaws and take out the number of the state costs.
And as
apparently that's been tried.
So our homeowners have spoken and said they want people who are very good standing
To be able to vote for the board.
So I mean, running in a deadline, you know, as a whatever time, 12 o'clock or 12 o'clock, he runs a report.
So my only comment about certification is that it's not that I think that we would need to see that to certify any election, but if you saw anomalies, you want to see it. And so I'm not eager to like write us out of that equation to be able to see that. I mean, there's things you can do. You know how many lots we have. You know how many people are eligible to vote. You know what our current election rate is, and you can kind of do a calculation to see, does this seem within normal limits and compare it to previous years? If it's outside of that, I want to see a little bit more information.
You correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I read that to be in good standing, you have to be current or have entered into an agreement to bring yourself. So the only people who would not be in good standing are those that have neglected to try to bring themselves current. So we're not talking about people having to run down and pay their bill right before the election. We're talking that people have had to make have had to take responsible steps as a homeowner to keep their account in good standing by definition.
Well, I'll just have one kind of factoid, as I understand it mostly from Linda Bradley, that is some years people have been, they're delinquent. In other words, it's not just dues, but it's any financial obligation to Valley. And sometimes it's been a tiny, like a late charge or a tiny fine or something. So the Linda commented that somebody was delinquent by $1.28. that would have been enough to kick the initiative notwithstanding. Just saying, it's not just dues, it's the entire packet. But
there are times it can happen when you don't know. Clerical error, mistake, or whatever, your bank doesn't send a payment, you don't know. So that's what I think it's a good thing to do. But again, if accounting is reaching out to these people periodically and letting them know, and they're just ignoring it.
Because they will, even with $1.28, you're going to get your apparently reminder, your invoice from.
So in 2022's election, we had 9 ballots of what was received. I have this printed off of 2022, the amount of ballots mailed, what came back, blah, blah, blah. And we had 9 ballots that were invalid because of the way they were marked.
Okay.
We had 0 budget only ballots. And we had 1 invalid because it was duplicate.
And that was the year they weren't following them?
That's the year that we allowed Unilect to handle all of it.
Was it the year before that?
I have to go back and look.
Yeah, this would be a good year.
Well, yeah, but I think even when, you know, like that last year was the first year that N&E and staff together did not work on getting the ballots.
Yeah.
That was previously.
That's 10 ballots out of 3,100.
Yeah. I was just surprised to see 0.
Yeah. There was 0 budget only ballots this year.
I was going to ask again, so with the question, the ultimate question, which is, which N&E manual do we go with? You have been in every single word of this. What are your pain points with the one that is approved of as of now? What bothers you about it?
The only thing that bothers me is that it is when I'm not doing things like this, you know, I'm a publisher and writer. It is ugly.
Yeah, okay.
And it's a little bit incomplete.
Okay.
Could I live with it at this point? I feel like I have to limit the number of life days I give to our beloved community. If that one has been approved, it would be non-controversial, end of story. We would have another year to, or we could use the one I've done, but then we need to get the board to reapprove. And I think that this issue of not in good standing or the Consumer Protection Act, etc., would come up again, and it would simply delay, not necessarily permanently delay, but would mean that this thing would linger on through August, and we know that we want it resolved by September 5th. We really need to have it when we start looking at the candidates. So, yeah, I mean, I'm open to a motion from anyone on the committee who wants to move that we choose or do X. So
I want to make a motion that we accept where we're at with the 2022 consent agenda manual. There were some changes that we made in it that were agreed upon. It wasn't a completely revised manual, but there were a couple things that we got in it, and it was discussed and yay or nay. But we have an operating manual that will work just fine this year, and that we table the 2023 manual until next year.
Michael, you're the secretary. I hope you're writing it all.
I know and we just table it. So anyhow, I make a motion to keep the 2022 consent agenda manual and table the 2023 manual until next year and start on it early with the committee and get it in early next year.
I second that, and I just want to make a statement that I thank you, Gail, for all of the time and effort and life days and blood, sweat, tears.
Might not be twisting you, my dear, really love it, but not really precious.
No, I agree, and I just have to say I find it so unfortunate that the time that you put into it wasn't respected.
I don't know if it wasn't respected.
Well, Oh, you asked to have it on the agenda and it wasn't, and I think that is, exactly, I think that is disrespectful of your time as a volunteer and as a community that relies on volunteers. I think that's very unfortunate that happened. That said, I appreciate what you did very much. Well, of course, and that's what I would say is that this is the starting point for next year. We have probably a couple of bullet point items that we feel that we need to get more information on or that we want to flesh out a little bit better. And I think we start with where you are and we have that list of things that we know we want.
So then you're gonna run greater this year to get up.
I will volunteer my heart out, but I'm not running again.
So I'm making a motion to run with 2022 manual and start 2024 to work on a complete revision. And so Karen seconded that, correctly? Okay, so now we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion needed? Go ahead.
Because Rob, how many times is there?
I just want to fight Rob.
Period, so it's bad.
Yeah, you guys are really, really hard to hear. I'm picking up probably 60% of what you're saying. I think Michael's has a motion that's been seconded to where we would use the N&E manual as it was approved by the board.
Correct.
Is that the motion?
That is the motion. We will go with it this year.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I understand what's on the floor.
And did you want to comment? Because I was about to call the question.
Oh, no, I'm agreeing. What I'm hearing, I'm agreeing. It's really hard to kind of hear. Yeah, I probably should have just rolled up there, but I didn't want to get run over on the road. So.
Running really hard too.
Yes, do not be rolling our roads.
There's just a really huge echo in those mics, and my hope is that admin can dial that sound in a little bit in that room.
Hey, Rob, if you want to give me a call tomorrow, I'll give you the rundown if you have any questions about particular things.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it.
So, hearing no desire for further discussion, I will call the question. All in favor of the motion? Since apparently we are moving into format, the chair can also vote, so it's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, well, we have a few other things. So let me see what kind of time. We actually have 30 more minutes, even though it seems like we spent a lot of time. But it was a very important thing. It's that, I think that going forward into the UGM, we do want to have something.
Over here now.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to I'm trying to keep up with secretary.
Well, you were amazing last time. I think we not quickly with it. Okay, well, so I wanted to just want to discuss a little bit our relationship with admin. Morgan is here, so she has to answer questions. So whether she's authorized to answer, I don't know.
I will try my best.
And with the board. So one question that I think we had tried to put as an agenda item on the draft was to determine who was our designated staffers, and especially going forward when we get to the, we get to September, October, and there's a lot going on. Now, okay, I have that question. Who's our designated staff person? Just 1 second, Morgan, because I know you want to speak to that. But I also have a deeper question, and that is, who speaks for the board? Because the treasurer told me that our GM is our designated staff person. But that individual may speak for the board, but can't. The GM has always said to me she takes direction from the president. So these are kind of interrelated, again, kind of questions. And maybe I'm just raising them. I do have a kind of thought of how we deal with it. So now we'll go back to Morgan, because then I think I formally asked you Morgan, are you a person? You said yes, I am.
Well, I think the way it works is that the idea is that committees don't direct staff, right? They should be speaking to the GM, who then would designate us to do something. The way can you hear me?
I don't know if Rob can.
Rob, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you better than the
That being
rest of the
said,
team.
the way that we sort of have split up staff, and certainly this isn't like by, hard and fast rules, is Diane is tasked to the ACC, and that tends to be a busy job. So that leaves me helping with N&E and the board. So, I mean, I think it's safe to say that if you request something be done, it will be, and Joanne would probably direct me to do it. So I think that's probably how that goes. When it comes to the election, I think it'll probably be all hands on deck, right? I mean, I've not worked in admin during an election, but I would think it gets pretty fast and busy. And so she probably will split up part of those tasks to me and Diane, depending on Diane's volume. And Teresa and Deb, depending on the task. So, but I mean, ultimately, when the board says Joanne is your staff person, that is because the committee shouldn't be directing staff. So if Joanne were to say to you, oh, if you need anything, contact Morgan, right? That would be different. But so what Joanne seems to want is for you to ask her questions of her, and then she directs me to do it.
Well, let me then, thanks, Lord, I appreciate it. I know you're always very helpful. Working. Yeah, the idea of I think I don't think it's better, but hopefully you can hear me now, Rob. I think a deeper question then becomes this, and this is what I've encountered since I've been the chair, effective, I guess, early June. And that is, if I assume that Joanne's plate is very full. She's still somewhat new here. It's a big organization. But Joanne has always been very clear that she takes direction from the president, and that my requests need to come to her from the president. Now, the president is also someone with a very full plate, a day job, a family, a life, and etc. And that becomes a bit of how would I describe it? The president's mailbox is full, so I can't leave it with him. It's always full. And I'm not sure how to make that communication chain work effectively. And in the meantime, we have other individuals on the executive team who have generously with their time tried to guide me. Unfortunately, only the president can instruct the GM. So again, I'd like to hear from the committee. I thought perhaps it was time for us to write from the committee a formal letter describing, the fact that the system seems to be blocked. It seems to be hung up. And there are times when if I have to wait 5 days to know whether my request has been even heard or acknowledged, much less, acted on. That's hard. Yes, I'm a volunteer, but still, like everybody, try and move through my life efficiently. So, okay, so I'm opening this to discussion or suggestions.
I know. So first I want to read from policy 2017.5, which is where this comes from, how the chain of command works. It says no director other than the president shall direct the general manager to initiate any action, project, or study without prior approval of the president or prior board direction. Individual directors and committee chairs may not intervene in staff decision-making for the development of staff recommendations, scheduling of staff work, and execution of SBCA priorities without prior approval of the board president or board as a whole, with notice thereof promptly provided to the general manager. Now, the way this is handled in the past, because as you described, the board going to the president going to the GM going to the staff to tell them to do an action, when half these people are volunteers, does not lead to a well-run organization. So in previous times, we worked on committees and on the board, and Gail, you might remember this too, if it worked this way, was that as a committee chair, you were given a direct line to a staff person that was assigned to that committee. You were able to, I mean, I'm thinking of my short time as a treasurer. I cannot imagine if I could just discuss things with the accounting manager, not make decisions, but certainly could tell them what to do and things, but we could have conversations and we could share information. I can't imagine being able to do that, or even ACC when I was on, even though I wasn't chair, without having the ability to work collaboratively with a designated staff person. So if I like your idea of sending a letter, and this is the way that I think it has worked well in the past, is that every committee had a designated staff person that chair had a direct line to. I will caveat to say that chair could not direct staff. The staff still reported to the GM, and you couldn't tell them to do anything that they didn't want to do. That would have to go to the GM, but you certainly could work collaboratively. And if it was within their role, their normal duty, you know, what they were comfortable with, and I guess the word is just we were able to work collaboratively very well together.
You know, you started something I haven't read, was that a bylaw?
It's a policy, board policy.
A board policy. Did you want to give me that citation?
2017.5.
Well, anyway, we have very few committees right now. In the past, before, 5 or 6 or 7. However, I'm not sure that a request that you suggested, Karen, is going to be acknowledged.
Sometimes common sense needs to prevail. If just use the same word, it's been person appointed by Joanne to say the type of minutes. My board given minutes directly interactive with her. She does her job. It's not like my classroom building was dry cleaning, and that's outside the scope of Morgan's. Right, but I mean, there has to be some level of understanding that Joanne has designated Morgan as liaison between Gail and as the chairperson, and you give her something that is within the scope of business. There's no reason for her being able to do it. She doesn't just work out on the web. If you give her something, if you give her a manuscript or a task for her to do, I'm sure she's going to say something about it. You know, it's got to be, we have to be some level of common sense. That's what gets me. So much that goes on here is just not using common sense and is putting up roadblocks for anything you've done. Most of these meetings should take 10 minutes. Because we're doing common sense, they go on and on. It should be very easy. We're not giving, if there's a delegated person on staff who needs to be working, you go and direct the person. It's not overriding that policy. Do not look for that person directly. Only have to direct them to work with you and continue to fulfill that direction, not create. Maybe the situation is
rather than because number one, I would mortgage to type of yeah, I know. And when I do have, very routine things, I do ask for mortgage, and she's very helpful. So I have no problem with that. I think what I'm encountering, and Michael might not feel that he encountered this, I'm not sure, is say I have an item that I want to put on the agenda. Now that's going to be significant, right? Because we have 24 board meetings a year. If it's on the agenda, it's probably going to need a motion on the board approval. Like, how do I work with this system in a logical sense or something, where the person who can make it happen needs to go with someone else who is perhaps overwhelmed with other responsibilities and doesn't get that. Or I should say, I don't want to say me, because I feel it really is committee. I think that the committee is not trying to bring, I'm not the committee, and I'm not trying to bring trivial things forward. No, I wasn't speaking. So that is where I thought perhaps the letter would be helpful, because I've tried all of these, so more conversations with other people.
Well, I think I might have misunderstood your first thing. So it was like moving things. You're mostly just talking about moving along, which is it's a kind of collaborative thing. So it needs to be approved to go on the agenda, which is a prejudice as an executive committee action, and then that needs to get communicated to a staff person to actually put it on the agenda. Never seen this be hard. Been on a lot of boards, served on a lot of committees. These are the simple things. This is absolutely the responsibility of the president to be responsive to these requests. 100%. So,
I was told when I was on there that all I had to do was send a request to the board. It didn't say president, it said to the board. So I sent it to every request I made, I sent it to the executive committee. And once. So yeah, and I was kind of to note that some of this, the restrictions that the staff has is they can't give out, it's for records requests only restrictions is they can give you stuff out of records. So you can, I don't see why we couldn't apply. Again, this is nonsense, and really, you should be able, as a standing committee, should be, the chair of the standing committee should be able to go directly to their staff contact or the GM and say, I need to get this on the agenda, the next, possibly the next, or one of the next meetings by this day. So we have 2 meetings, they have 2 board meetings a month. Could I get this on one of these board meetings this month? And that information can go, like, if we can send it to Morgan and Joanne. I don't see why Joanne couldn't say, AJ, they want to put this on the thing. And say, okay, instead of trying to get to AJ only to go to Joanne, that, it's got to go uphill and downhill, whichever way it's going to get it to work. So, but I don't know the answer to it because it didn't work for me every time.
No, but I would agree with just sending it to the whole board, just so everyone's.
Yeah, I sent it to the executive committee.
Well, that's not the whole. You sent it to the. I sent it to the whole board. Just
Yeah.
the whole board knows what's being requested. May or may not get on there. The other thing that's significantly different from when I served on the board or even committees and was paying certain attention was that once a month there were committee reports standard. So regardless,
We haven't done that at all.
right? So whether you had a specific agenda item or not, you definitely as a committee chair had the opportunity to just talk about things or but I've never seen roadblocks to elected members not being able to get the issues that they feel need to be discussed onto an agenda. I don't even know how or why that would happen. It's baffling. And you're certainly not the first I have heard to say this. It's, I don't know if pervasive is the right word, but it's common. Not this year, last year.
Well, I did wonder if a formal letter, a civil, I mean, always driving the civil. So it's not really an issue. Just saying that this is a problem. Yeah, it is a problem. You know, this entire thing we've gone through should have been addressed at least 2 or 3 meetings where it had been requested.
Because of our timeline.
Yeah, because of our timeline. So that was the only thing I could come up with. I mean, you know, we're all human and do the best we can, and I assume that's true of everyone, right? Somebody maybe isn't doing what I want them to do, but they're hopefully doing what someone else wants them to do, and they can only do, you know, 1 or 2 things at a time. Well, I truly have been troubled and unsure how to work this, you know, without upping the negativity. Don't want to do that. People don't want to be attacked. Everybody can feel any better about whatever. But like, what? The only thing I got was a formal letter saying we need improved, more responsive communication.
Yeah. The whole board would be my recommendation. Because I suspect.
Yeah, it would be a letter to.
Yeah, but I suspect you're also not feeling this.
Well, there are only 2 committees I'm aware of, well, and the gala.
No, I think even directors themselves would want to get something on the agenda. So from past directors, it was to be able to speak about the things that they felt the community needed to talk about. And as a community member, that is troubling to me because everyone on the board right now is elected. So everyone should, I mean, not that even as an appointed member, you wouldn't have this because you are duly appointed human. But, you know, that is the purpose, I think, is that each individual member should be able to bring forward the things that they personally or from the, especially from the committee that they represent, especially when it's a standing committee. I like the idea of a letter.
I don't think I would make a motion for the letter. I would probably draft it and, you know, circulate it among the committee and send it, possibly even, you know, each thing, I mean, Jeff is certified mail return request, but, you know, just to make sure that there's a record that at least the communication was attempted.
Yeah, even if just a first official documentation of it, I think even for that purpose.
Board has a responsibility to its committees, its committee members, and the members of this association. And if they are not allowing those 3 units to be heard, they are failing as a board. This is it. The board is not there to serve themselves, it's there to serve the community.
I think people may disagree on how to say community, so I don't want to start with that kind of
if somebody wants to put something on the agenda, it needs to be put on the agenda. It might not be the next agenda or the next 2 agendas. The board has a responsibility to get anything on the agenda that people want on the agenda at a time when it's most reasonable. You know, at a most reasonable time. Can't put it on the agenda 4 years from tomorrow, but it might not be. If you ask for something to be on the agenda and the board has a responsibility to respond and say, we are putting it on this agenda. Similarly to like when you put in a request for ACC. You might not get it at the next meeting, but they're going to tell you when it's going to be on the agenda.
Yeah.
The board has the same responsibilities to its members and its committees.
Well, I think we should make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to draft a letter to the entire board on the communication chain issues addressing the needs of the N&E because of our time constraints for the election. I have that written down here, so.
Good motion, yeah. Okay. That's my motion. Do I hear a second? I can't help it, I'm a writer and a publisher. The text. So, okay. I mean, I would like to draft it up, even though I'm not the secretary anymore, only because I've had such recent experience.
It should come from.
Yeah, but I will definitely circulate it, you know. I mean, my goal is not to, my goal is to solve the problem.
That's that way. We should all be working collaboratively, committees, the board, and staff. That's the goal. That isn't the goal of everyone. We need to address that issue and figure out why that is not the goal of everyone.
I don't know that that can happen. I mean, you know, HOAs don't have their precinct therapists available to come in, you know, sort through the.
Sure, but again, I've served on a lot of different committees, and they did not get along, and there were hiccups. I'm not saying there never were, but I just never seen this much of an issue. I've certainly seen, I've been on a committee before where it was like, we didn't feel supported, jumped in on things that we thought was, you know, we jumped in on things that we thought was our responsibility. There have been things where nobody was quite sure where their lane was. This seems more to me, and again, it's not even just this. There's a concern that I have. So,
Is Rob still with us, or is he
No.
signed up?
No, he was fine.
Okay. Well, I think we heard from Lori, we heard from Sharon, we heard from Michael. It's about 2 minutes to 8, so I will call the question on Michael's motion. All in favor of a letter? Get to vote, so this is great.
So I put in my notes here that Gail's going to write a letter addressing the issues and ideas on how to make communication work properly.
Yeah, I was hoping I some of the letter.
Okay.
Let's see.
So,
Okay, just really quickly then, we should maybe go back to the issue on the table for the 26th, because we're not planning to meet again.
well, what about this ACC chair term? Are
Oh,
we need to worry about that?
Rob was working on that, and I just simply researched all the minutes at ACC. What happened is that Keith McLean was appointed to ACC like in July. By September, he becomes chair. And then he ran and then was chair for 3 years. So he has a second 3-year term on ACC if he wants it, or if he run for anything. So I did see Keith, and I shared that with him, and I was going to just draw his line, let him know that the question of certain work is difficult to sort out. Anything else on the table? So just generally speaking, are people going to have some availability on the 26th? I know Michael will do your hot rod stand, so I'm not asking you.
Gail, the vendor portion is 11 to 6. Even though there's a regatta proceeding and then there's a movie starting at 8. So the part where the vendors are participating is 11 to 6.
You know, with
11 to 6.
11 to 6, August 26th.
you know, in the town hall section of the town hall. Yeah.
I don't know. I hadn't heard that we were still doing the town hall. I thought we're choosing not to because it was seemed like such a full day. So I don't know. I could have.
Yeah. No way, I'm not saying that it's fine. But
I said full day.
Full day.
Yeah, it's a full day.
So Yeah, it was something. But there's a limited amount of time to have a budget town hall from that. And I mean, it's got like a month from, we're gonna hear the ops budget on the 3rd, and then they have to vote on it on the 7th.
Well, we'll see about that. I'm only thinking that I think it would be nice for N&E to have a table for maybe 4 hours. And just since it might just be really the 3 of us who would even have availability to person it. And it might be nice if we could be there at least, you know.
Maybe one of you can relieve Mike and sell his dogs, and he can go to the table. He might want a break.
Never mind. We're just saying that we can go work your hot dog truck and give That'd be more fun.
We can go get his hot dogs.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I have some availability. If we kind of know, I do. Yeah, on that day. So if I can.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about maybe something, we can talk further about it. You know, first I thought we should do it, you know, go through this business meeting, the budget meeting. If there's not gonna be a budget meeting, that's fine too. And really, Michael is probably very good, you know, chatting people up at his conference, sending them over to our
Maybe flyers and application packets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can trust it.
I could wrap their hot dogs in an application.
And then it's gonna come to all greasy and with mustard spots on it.
That's actually perfect. I love that.
So I think we need to get the exact timeline
Yeah.
of this
Okay, so,
anniversary party. And
so you don't have a bill.
I'm probably sure Bob would volunteer for a little time there. So between you, Gail, Karen, and Rob, I'm sure you guys can work out 4-hour window or 3-hour window. And then I will talk to everybody in my car. So.
All righty, well, do we have any further?
Well, you have draft August views articles.
Oh, I included it, and there's, what we talked about before. I don't know that I really need to use approval of these things, but anyway.
Is it in here somewhere?
Yeah, it's, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I have it.
You have one?
I need sure your vote counts. This one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
This
this
is
one.
just a reminder, it's, you know, what was discussed about the standing, trying to get information out, you know, to everyone who believes.
I think it's great. Good job. Okay.
All righty, well, so there is no more business. So can I entertain a motion to adjourn? All righty. All in favor?
At 8:03. 8:02 and a half. All right.
You said somewhere you were talking, and you said something about